Once there was a blackbird, and she made a little nest, and lovingly she lined it with the feathers from her breast. Then she laid her little egg, she only managed one, and she sat and she waited for the hatching out to come. Just sat and warmed the egg, while her husband fetched the grub. Well, the weeks went by, and the days grew long, and the mother bird sat and sang her little song. Then one day she felt a stir and she heard a little click, and the egg cracked open and she had a little chick. Well, fancy that. So she cried, "Hey Papa, come and see our boy, with his little white head and his little pink eye and his little white wings." "Hey, that's not right," she squawked. "My goodness, this chick's white." Well, what's the difference? He's all we've got. Bless his cotton socks. But Papa didn't like it and said so pretty quick. "A white blackbird is enough to make you sick. And while I remember, here's another thing. You were pretty damn friendly with that seagull last spring." So he left. That's the last she saw of him. Well, the mother carried on as best she could. She tended to the chick and brought him his food. She hoped that as he grew, the whiteness would go. By the time the neighbors saw him, perhaps it wouldn't show. Well, you know what neighbors are. So the time came along when the young ones leave the nest, and she hadn't even told him he was different from the rest. Well, he shook his white wings and he kissed her goodbye. "Got to go now, Ma. It's time I learned to fly." So he left, off to conquer the world. The first thing he saw was a flock of blackbird hens. His natural inclination was to up and make friends. So he fluttered up with a friendly, "How'd you do?" They all turned round and looked him through and through. They didn't like what they saw one bit. One turned to the others, saying, "Who is this brat? He must think he's a blackbird, and we're not having that. Get away from us, Whitey." And she fetched him such a smack. "Blackbirds, where we come from, have got to be black." A real dogmatist, that one. Well, everywhere he went, he found the story was the same. If he ever tried to eat with them or join them in a game, the other blackbirds hated him, didn't want to know. And when he said, "I'm one of you," they told him where to go. If he'd gone there, he'd have burned black. They drove him from the eating spots, he couldn't get a bite. They chased him from his perch when he tried to roost at night. And when the days were getting longer and winter drawing in, he was looking very peaky and undersized and thin. When the snow lay on the ground, life got even harder. The blackbirds all went frantic, finding something for the larder. And a well-intentioned lady living in the neighborhood said, "I must do something for the birds. I'll put them out some food." So every day she sprinkled crumbs on the windowsill, and all the birds who lived nearby would come and eat their fill. Our little friend soon heard of it and said, "I'll have some too. If I want to last till spring, there's nothing else to do. I'll just join the bread line with the rest of the charity cases." Next feeding time they gathered, and the white chick too. The other blackbird screamed at him, "There's nothing here for you." They mobbed him and pecked him and beat him to the ground, and his body in a pool of blood was what the lady found. "My goodness," said the lady, "what a nasty thing to find. How could the birds do such a thing to one of their own kind? I must tell my husband. I wonder what he'll say when I tell him what the birds have done to this chick here today." "Where have you been?" she asked him when he got home that night. I've been to a meeting, and that's what made me late. A few of the neighbours called it to see what could be done about this Negro moving in to number 21. Now, I'm not colour prejudiced, you know I'm not that kind, but if this black moves in, there's no telling where it'll end. I've nothing against the Negro, I'd never discriminate, but I bought this house and I don't want to watch it devaluate. We don't want this district to become another slum, and we all know that's what happens if you let the Negroes come. I'm sure with a little pressure, this guy will see we're right. It's nothing against him personally, but this street stays white. Dear, she said, I'm sure there's truth in what you say. Just put it to him reasonably, and I'm sure he'll go away. Then over tea, he told her all the gossip he had heard, and she clean forgot to tell him about the white blackbird.